Hello, I'm Gerry Bradley, President of the University of Louisville, and this is Red and Bold, a podcast where we have vital conversations in the hopes of uniting both Cardinals and community. Stay with us. Today's guest has led our Cardinal women's basketball program since 2007. His remarkable record includes 12 trips to the NCAA Sweet 16, 8 to the Elite 8, 4 to the Final Four, and 2 to the national title game. He recently won his 500th game at UofL on January 2026, an amazing accomplishment. On this episode, we'll sit down with our record-setting coach, Jeff Walz, to talk leadership, challenges, opportunities, and how to build a great team. All right, Jeff, thanks for being here.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, I appreciate your busy schedule, and I know we've got a game tonight against Wake Forest, so all the best and good luck with that. And, just so excited to spend this time with you. I know I had the opportunity to be with you at UConn, and what a wonderful opportunity it was to spend with you and your team and the coach, and just a wonderful spirit, the culture that you've built around that team, and not a surprise, I guess, to me on your success, because you're just an amazing leader. But I guess tell us a little bit about your early life, Jeff. I know you went to Northern Kentucky University where you did your undergrad, and then you went to West Kentucky where you got your master's. But tell us about how you got into basketball, and tell us a little bit about your childhood.
Well, yes, I appreciate this. I grew up in a family of 4 kids. Grew up in Northern Kentucky, went to Fort Thomas Highlands. I've got 2 older brothers, and then a younger sister, Jamie. And we just all grew up playing sports. It was a situation. We had a neighborhood that there were 10 of us in it, 10 kids, 9 boys, and then my sister made 10. So she's, and I'll get into it a little later, but she's why I'm here today. But as you're growing up, everybody played every sport back in those days. You'd have your baseball, and then your football, your basketball over the winter months, and then whatever came in between, track and field, whatever it might be. And I was very fortunate to have parents that not only made sure you were doing what you're supposed to do in the classroom, taking care of schoolwork, but then pushed us to be the best. And when you've got 2 older brothers, I'm 54 right now. My oldest is 57, 56, and we're all kind of right there. You're just competing against each other all the time.
I have 5 boys at home, so I kind of know I know how that goes.
Yes, exactly. And then my sister is 7 years younger than all of us, but she was just kind of thrown into the mix. So growing up, I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to play basketball. And my freshman year, both of my brothers, we were all on the team together. We ended up going to the state to tournament down in Lexington, which is a big thing here in Kentucky. Everybody wants opportunity to play in the Sweet 16. I did that. My high school coach for 2 years ended up being my college coach for 2. So moved on from Highlands High School to NKU, and I wanted to be a secondary education, a business teacher, and then coach. And back in those days, you had your 4 or 5 years to get your undergraduate degree, which I played 2.5 years, I like to say, at Northern before I retired. Some say I may have quit. I say I retired. I came to realize the good Lord did not bless me with very quick feet. So it was a challenge for me on the basketball court. And when that took place, I called home and I told my parents, I'm quitting. And the first question from my dad was, are you sure? And then how you planning to pay for college? Because I was on a scholarship.
Yeah.
And back in those days, in the early 90s, I was actually going through all of my files about 3 months ago, cleaning things up, and I found my tuition bill. Back in 1993, it was $750 for the semester.
Gone up a little bit.
It's gone up just a little bit. And then that's when I found a 7th grade girls job at Fort Thomas Middle School.
Wow.
And that's kind of how I got into my coaching.
Yeah. Wow, it's amazing. I mean, and I know we talked before, you'd mentioned that, you'd coached your sister, and that was kind of part of the reason why you began this journey. But, did you ever think about women's basketball you've dedicated your whole career to? Did you ever think about trying it in men's or,
I'd had the opportunity twice.
Yeah.
Once at Western Kentucky, possibly to be a GA, and then once at Maryland. And, the one thing about coaching on the women's side that I thoroughly have enjoyed is the relationships. You go out, you recruit a player, they come to your school, and unless there's a transfer in place, which up until the last 4 or 5 years, it was very seldom that a player would do that, you'd recruit them at the age of 16 and 17, and then they sign with you, and then all of a sudden they're 22 or 23. So the relationship you build.
Sure.
And that was something that I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
Watching them come in, and I still today will laugh with them because they'll be like, I'm an adult, I'm a grown adult. And I always like to ask, well, who pays your cell bill? And that's like, well, my mom. Who pays your car payment? My dad. I'm like, as soon as you start paying all those, then we make it talk. So you see them come in as teenagers, 19-year-olds, and then they leave as an adult.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. That's why I've stayed in women's basketball.
That's amazing. And I know from just seeing the players and how they interact with you, I know you're more than a coach to them. You're a mentor, you're a father figure, and you're just, amazing. But, so you came here in 2007.
Yes, sir.
We had not a stellar, probably record at that time. I think we'd only been, 4 times to the NCAA tournament in our entire history. So you come in, and on your first year, you blow it out of the park, right? I mean, you just came in, and when you came in, what did you do that year? Like what did, because you had the success in Maryland and in places before that, but that year to kind of suddenly ignite the team that you probably hadn't had a part in. What did you do?
I was very fortunate when I took the job here. Tom Collin actually took a job at Arkansas. And I always tell everyone that asks me how this journey has gone. I was one of the few that have taken over a job where the coach wasn't fired. Normally, you're taking a job over because the program's terrible, and you're trying to start from scratch.
Sure.
They had not had a lot of success in the NCAA, the tournament, but they had Angel McCautry.
Okay.
Was going into her junior year. Angel was from Baltimore. I recruited Angel to Maryland, and I knew her and her family, and she was an All-American her sophomore year here.
Okay.
So a lot of, I think what helped was when I got hired, I knew I had a relationship with the best player. And on my interview, they gave me the opportunity to meet with some of the players, because the players also wanted to have an idea of who we'd be hiring here.
Yep.
And Angel was a huge proponent. When your best player is talking to the rest of the team, going, this guy's good. I like this guy. We're going to like him. And from day one, when I walked in here, I'm on my interview, and they're asking me questions. And it had been about 2 weeks since Tom had resigned to go to Arkansas. And I started asking them. I said, you've got four incoming freshmen who signed with a head coach and a staff that they're not here anymore. Have any of you reached out to them to tell them it's going to be okay?
Yeah.
And they're all like, no. I go, so you guys have each other here to talk to, but now you've got these freshmen that don't know anybody. You haven't done that? And I watched their faces, and I didn't say anything after that. And then the next day, on my second day of my interview, here comes Patrika Barlow, who was a senior at the time, our point guard, Candace Bingham, and Angel McCautry. We reached out to all of them. We talked to all the freshmen, and they were so relieved that we called. So just from that day is when I tried to establish, if I was going to get this job, for the players to understand if they want to have a great team, it's got to be one that's driven by them. Sure, it's our job as leaders to give them the power and show them the way, but they have to start. And that's when it started for us.
Wow. So I guess that goes into sort of your leadership style, because let's see here, you've been 19 years now when you add it all up. I think your winning game average is over 27 games a season, right? You not only have all the successes that I talked about, but you have, I think, 4 ACC titles added to that in women's basketball. You've also, of course, been on the international stage. I think you've won 4 gold medals with teams. That's sort of another part that maybe people are not familiar with. But tell us about your coaching philosophy. How have you, what are the core things that you feel like you bring to any team, no matter what it is, that's guided you?
Sure. It all started for me, I think, even at home. My parents instilled in us that it was, you knew you were loved and cared about, but there were expectations. And I think I've carried that through my coaching. And then when I went down to Western Kentucky as a GA, Paul Sanderford, who was the head coach at the time there, Paul's in the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame. So I was fortunate to work 6 years with a Hall of Famer. And he showed me, he's like, if you care about your players and your staff, and they know you do, you can challenge them and push them as hard as you want. But they have to understand and know you're doing it because you care about them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I learned from Paul in early in my career, when we would walk into the office at Diddle Arena at Western, Paul knew every janitor's name. He would walk in and it'd be Phil. He'd be like, "Hey, Phil, how are you doing?" And I just took note and watched.
Yeah.
And I was so impressed because as Paul told me, he goes, sure, I might be the head coach, but Phil has every key to every office in every room in this entire building. And, sometimes you think the head coach has the power that but it's the person at the bottom that runs everything, that knows where everything is. So I learned, he taught me, you're no better than anybody else. Don't be afraid to do the smallest task. And if you're willing to do that, then you can get everybody to follow behind, and then they'll start to do it. And if you don't have to constantly push and probe, it makes life a lot easier.
Wow. Yeah. So you obviously lead by example.
I try to.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
That's awesome. So, I know you've had some great, coaching rivalries probably over the years. I mean, you're the 5th winningest active coach right now. And I guess my first question, before we get to maybe some of the role models you might have out there in coaching, but staying 19 years in one institution is pretty amazing in this day and age. What's kept you here at UofL?
Well, I joke about that because I always tell everyone, normally in the profession of college athletics and coaching, you get out before they get you. I've had opportunities to move.
Bet you
on,
have. Yeah, it's your record.
I'm sitting here. I'm an hour and a half from my home. My parents still come down and watch us play. My wife's family is 5-hour drive, a 4.5-hour drive. Her parents come in.
Yeah.
There's something to be said when your kids can see grandma and grandpa.
Yeah.
Their aunts and uncles, their cousins. So family was a big part of it. Family is a major part of why, I've decided this is where I want to be. But then it all started when I first came and I saw the commitment that the University of Louisville has towards women. It's not just women's basketball. It's all women. And that's what I was so impressed with. And it's transferred down from one athletic director to the next, and now with Josh.
Yeah.
And then our fan base.
Yeah.
We are blessed to be in a city that they care about women's sports. We travel all over the ACC, all over the country. We're playing top 20 matchups, top 10 matchups, and there'll be 2,000 people. And it's two top 10 teams playing.
Yeah.
And I just keep reminding our players how fortunate we are.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, I have a belief and a philosophy that if you want people to come, you have to give.
Sure.
So I make sure that we're out in the community. I don't want anybody to ever think our players are better than anybody else. I'm better than anybody. And that's what I think makes this place so special.
Yeah.
And that's why I've stayed.
Wow. Well, I've heard you're kind of a pretty intense kind of guy too. In many ways, I've heard stories about you being out with a chainsaw cutting down shrubs along some of our properties because you got so frustrated that people weren't taking care of it. I think there's a story where the former President Bendapudi drove past you and was asking you what you were doing. I did hear one story once that apparently you had somebody, I think it was a contractor in your house, and you kind of got your trees cut, and you had asked him, when should I do this again? And he said, well, maybe 4 or 5 years. And then 4 years to the day, you gave him a call.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So you obviously are, very focused when you're on your job, right? So what do you do to relax? What gives you a break?
I love spending time with my family.
Okay.
I will say, I've learned throughout my career, when I'm on the job, I'm giving it everything I've got. But when I go home, I am able now to leave work at work.
Yeah.
Now my wife and girls and my son, we're all involved in it. So, we'll talk about the game.
Yeah.
Even after our Duke game,
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Tough loss.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
A 1-point game.
Wow. Yeah. What a game.
I got home. We talked about it. My wife and I talked about the game. Some of the things I could have done differently. A shot we missed. Some of the, the plays that took place. And as we're talking, she was like, now you've got 2 girls up there that are devastated. My 12 and 10-year-old low and loose were just bawling, crying.
Yeah, no, gosh.
After the game.
Yeah.
But then, I just tried to explain to them
Yeah.
that this is, you get the good and you get the bad.
Yeah.
And that's what athletics is all about. But it teaches you to make sure you enjoy the good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, I'm able then to move on. It's like, okay, well, what's next? And I've done a much better job of that. So spending time with family, I love to snow ski. So that's when the season is over, I'll go out to Colorado, and the technology is amazing. So I'll have my helmet with my Bluetooth in it. And with the transfer portal open, I'm calling recruits as I'm going down
working.
the hill. It's amazing.
Yeah. Wow, that is amazing. And I guess, there was a time when the game was more blocks of time where you knew you were off. But the game has changed completely now with NIL and the portal. And I guess, give us your thoughts about where we're going with the NIL and how that's impacting, women's sports and how it'll impact sports in general. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a whole nother podcast. Something has to be done.
Yeah.
I'm not, if it's a salary cap, but it's just everybody's finding out, it's you're either going to play by the rules or you're not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's kind of how it's been even before all of this. I have no problem with the players being compensated in some way, but I'm afraid in women's basketball, we're going to go back 25 years in the terms of our parity. Because whoever's got the most money to pay out is going to get the best players. Yep. Where it used to be 25, 30 years ago, everybody had a team, but you knew the 7 or 8 teams that were going to be playing in the Elite 8 or Final 4 every year. And we've done such a good job of universities investing in other women's teams. And just how you travel, the support in marketing, things like that now there's your Louisvilles. And I, tell people, you talk about Tennessee's tradition they've had, and everybody talks Tennessee, and I'll educate some of the recruits and go, the University of Louisville been to 4 Final Fours since Tennessee's been back to 1. But it's their brand. Yeah. And that's where other universities now are investing in that. Well, now with rev share, NIL, it's
Yeah.
and I don't blame these kids. I'm just I call them kids because I treat them like they're my own kids. But if I come into your home and I share this with our fans, I'm like, if you're working at a job and you're making $100,000, and the competitor calls you and says, "I'll pay you $250,000," are you staying?
Mm-hmm.
And they're all like, "Well, of course not." Mm-hmm. I go, "Then why do you get mad?"
Yeah,
because that's what's happening.
Right.
These players aren't leaving for $5,000 or $10,000 more.
Yes, yeah.
They're smart enough to know.
Yeah,
I've got it good. Now, for us right now, I'm hoping to be able to announce in the next probably month that we probably already will have all of our team re-signed for next year.
Yeah.
So trying to be proactive. And I think that speaks volumes for the players that we have.
Absolutely.
Because they're willing, they like it here, they know they're taken care of. And instead of just going into the portal.
Yeah. And the culture you've created among the
see
group,
what's,
right?
yeah.
Well, I think I just came back from an ACC presidents, and you're absolutely right. I mean, the current model is unsustainable, and everybody knows it at this point in time. And it's just getting, a handle around it, and whether it's regulation from the federal government around it or, essentially, it continues. My concern, of course, is around the students, right? Because if students are transferring every year, then how are they going to graduate? I mean, it's all about athletes getting a degree, right? And the educational mission is going to be destroyed in a model where these kids are moving from one university to another, maybe even 2 or 3 in 1 year kind of thing. Oh. And it's just insane. So, but, kind of going back a little bit to, you got to 2 final championship games, yes. Right? First of all, when you lost that game, and like when you have any major tournament when you're in, how do you manage that? How do you pick yourself up?
We were unfortunate or fortunate. Like our 2 championship games, we lost to UConn.
Yeah,
and
I'll get to that, Coach.
Those 2 teams will probably go down as 2 of the top 5 teams ever to have played. So it was one, I mean, before the year started, everybody's like, well, who's finishing second?
Right, okay.
But so it was, it's always tough because you get to that one and you're like, okay, this is it. Right. Now, the hardest one was 2018.
Because you beat the number 1 seed in the semifinal, quarterfinal? Well,
we were the 1 seed.
Oh, so okay. Sorry.
We were 1 seed that year. Mississippi State was a 1 seed. We lost to them in overtime. They hit a buzzer beater. And then Notre Dame ended up winning the national championship, who we beat twice. We were their 2 losses. And that's, as I tell people, when you get to that point of your season, it takes a little luck too.
Yeah.
Ball bounces off a foot, it goes out of bounds, and they give it back to you, and it was off of you.
Yeah.
It all matters. And unfortunately, we just did not get a break that we needed, and it was a first time in Final Four history, and the only time that all 3 games went to overtime.
Wow.
So 18 was the one where it took a little bit of time to get over that.
Yeah. Wow. So now you have had, I think, 15 players go on to be drafted into the professional league, which of course speaks to the volumes of how you have built these players to reach that stage. Looking back at this amazing career with all these wins, what would you say is your greatest accomplishment?
Oh, the wins are great, and watching these kids succeed. I think we have 4 of them that have MBAs. Here from Louisville.
Yeah.
Kiana Smith, a young lady that played for us on the 22 Final Four team. She's now working for Jordan Brand. And, her Saturday morning class, she would have her earbuds in during practice.
Wow.
And would be listening. I'm like, Kiana, it's okay to skip. I can do both, Coach. And then when the professor would be done with the lecture, then she would get back in front because there'd be some question and answer. And I was like, if you can do this, you're going to succeed at whatever you do. And now she's gone on. Angel McCoughtry has won a 2-time Olympic gold medalist. My wife and I had the opportunity to go over and watch her win the gold in London.
Yeah.
Things, when you're watching what they do, and then Antonita Slaughter that played on our 13 Final Four team, she had triplets. And her husband coached at SEMO at the time, and she had a little podcast, a little web, however they do it, webcast that she would document and video, like her trying to get the 4 kids, because she had 4 prepared to go to the game.
Yeah.
It just, when you're watching things like that, you're like, man, it's really amazing. You see them as basketball players, and now I'm looking at them as moms and professionals.
Wow.
That to me is the rewarding part of all of it.
Yeah.
Because I will say, you talk about a couple of the games you played, but it's the memories you have.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what I try to keep sharing with our players. You know, we play tonight. Go out tomorrow night. Find a local restaurant. Go out. And the story, the laughs you'll have. And then in 20 years, that's what you're going to talk about. You won't talk about the Wake Forest game.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's what I enjoy the most.
Wow, that's amazing. So you've had some amazing rivalries with coaches over the year. You mentioned the UConn coach and you know, or the team, and obviously his record, I think, over 1,200 winning games. So who is your role model? I mean, and those rivalries, how did you get on with those folks? I mean, were you kind of intense with each other, or were you actually friends? And you know, how does that play itself out on the court?
I've got a few that I'm friends with. We're competitors when you're out there playing.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there's a few that, you know, it's oil and water.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like my mentor is Paul Sandiford. There's no question about that. But I've got some great rivalries with Westmore at NC State.
Sure.
You know, we are friends. We talk probably once every week and a half or 2 weeks. And then when we're playing each other, we're trying to beat each other. And that's the fun part of it, when you can compete. And then a few days after, you can pick the phone up and be like, all right,
yeah.
What was your plan? Because we play them once, we might play them in the conference, the ACC tournament. Yeah. But when you're able to share, like, hey, here's how we tried to stop you. Because I want to help him for his future games,
sure.
except for against us.
Yeah, right.
And he's trying to help me. So he's one. Gino has always been good to me.
Yeah.
He's just a friend. I mean, somebody that we can talk basketball with. Now, he hasn't lost a whole bunch of games. Yeah. I tell him all the time, we did beat him back-to-back years. You know, I make sure he knows that.
He probably remembers those because he didn't lose too many.
There's so few of them. You're exactly right. So, yeah, it's been great.
Yeah. So, from the standpoint of your routine before a game, do you get nervous? Are you tense? I mean, I know some folks, they want to just be on their own and they want to be in their zone. And so how do you prepare for the game, coming into the game, like an hour or two before the game? Do you try to, you know, be on your own, be thinking through things? Or
I try to get out into our fans as much as I can. I've never been, I just have somebody ask me if I have superstitions or anything.
Yeah.
I don't.
Okay.
So once we have our shoot around and we've prepared, my job is finished until the game starts. So I try to get out and talk to our fan base because I want them to know how much I appreciate that they come.
That's awesome.
I don't want to be that person that looks like we can't touch him. We can't touch him. I joke all the time, I've yet to miss a shot during a game. So before the game, I want everyone to know how much I appreciate them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Jeff, I know there are a lot of people out there listening who are either aspiring basketball stars or even coaches. And I guess what your final thoughts you would give to aspiring coaches, maybe one, you know, what advice would you give them as an experienced coach? And then number two, what would you advise young players who are beginning their journey or maybe on their journey? What advice would you give them?
If as a young player, I would encourage him, play as many sports as you can. Get out and understand, don't start training too early at one, because I've seen too many players, they get to that junior year in high school, senior, they get that scholarship, and then they're burnt out. It's like, man, all I've done is this.
Yeah.
Enjoy life. Make sure you're hanging with friends, you're doing the important things. It's just not your sport. And then as a aspiring coach, it's hard to get into college coaching, because it's not like you take a class or you find a degree, but you've got to try to reach out and do everything you can. I just actually received a handwritten note from a young man who is wanting to get into college coaching, and he put his phone number. I called him because I'll get plenty of emails. You take the time to write a handwritten note, that separates yourself.
Yeah.
And those are the things I try to tell him. You've got to figure out a way to separate yourself. Find one thing that you can be elite at. If it's recruiting, be elite at recruiting. And then constantly go out and make contacts. My own GAs, my staff that want to move up the ladder, I tell them every game we play, if you're not going down introducing yourself to the opponent's head coach, shame on you.
Yeah.
Because who knows when they might have a spot open. And those ones that do that to me, I will tell them, hey, I don't have anything, but put me down. You call me if something comes up. I'll be happy to give you advice or try and help you.
Awesome. That's awesome. Well, Jeff, we stand today, I believe your record right now is 22-4 this season.
Yes, sir.
We're number 2 in the ACC. How do you feel about this season? I know we don't want to jinx anything, but, obviously there's a lot of excitement and, and a lot of good reason to be. I remember when we met up in Annapolis and we had dinner and you told me, he said, I think this team will come good in January. And boy, did it turn out. Actually, they came good in December, right? They really started to fire. But, so what's your thoughts for the rest of the season here?
I'm optimistic. I feel really good about it. My whole job, I've got to continue to keep them all on a level playing field in the terms. For my 19 years, this is the first time I've ever had 7 players score 20 or more points in at least one game. Normally, you've got 3 or 4 kids that can do that, but they have 7. It's now making sure they continue on. You're going to score, but tonight might not be your night. They've done a great job of finding the mismatch, and then if it's yours, we get you the ball, and you'll score 20. I'll still get my 8 to 10.
Yeah.
And if I can keep that attitude, that mentality, and, I try to tell them, if you just stay within our circle, we're going to do well. But as soon as you start listening to people in that outer circle, we're going to have problems. And we've kept it tight.
Awesome.
And now we got to keep that.
Wow. Well, Jeff, it's so great to have you on the show here today. I really appreciate you. And you're just an amazing coach. You've had an amazing career. The stats are just, unbelievable. And we just wish you the very best for the rest of the season and keep doing what you're doing.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you.